Hello, magical people of the internet. I am Jen, and welcome to I Never Thought I Would, where we discuss doing things we never thought we would do and the fascinating places that they can lead us. I am so excited to introduce my guest today. She is fascinating. She is an author, a speaker, and a creativity coach. I have Lauri Schoenfeld. Hi, Lauri.
Hello, Jen. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I am so excited. You have a new book out and it sounds fascinating. Haven't had a chance to read it yet because it just launched 24, 48 hours ago. So this is fabulous. And as most creatives and most writers have fascinating imaginations, I would love you to share a story with us about doing something you never thought you would do and where it led you.
I love this question so much. I never thought I would ever be a cyborg and have to learn how to walk again. That was a big one, a life changer for me, for sure.
Okay, data. I'm dating myself with that reference. I don't know if you were a Star Trek fan, but what do you mean you're a cyborg?
I had scoliosis. I was diagnosed at 13 with scoliosis, where your spine is curved into an S or a C shape rather than straight.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore a Boston brace, which is this very big plastic piece of it's plaster basically that looks like armor and like a girdle, except it's super not cute, but it squeezes you really, really tight. And I wore that for 22 hours a day for almost a year and a half to try to help straighten my back. It was rough. It was really rough being, your preteens are already, you're hormonal and you're changing and everything is just all over the place, physically, emotionally. And then to have this big plastic brace on kind of extended and heightened that a little bit for me. But by the time I was 15, the brace did not help. And my curves were so extensive that they told me at that point, if we don't get you this surgery, this massive surgery where I now have 2 titanium rods on each side of my spine, and there's 18 hooks in my spine holding it in place.
Wow.
Without that surgery, I would have been crippled by 30, and my quality of life would not have been very good. So we had the surgery, and I'm a proud owner of all this beautiful metal in my body. And it took me 3 months to learn how to walk, 9 months to heal from being able just to start getting in the move of being able to dance a little bit. And it changed my life in a very drastic way, but in a very beautiful way as well.
Okay, I have so many questions. Did you experience bullying, teasing from the children around you that you were growing up with?
I did. I had a big hump on the right side of my shoulder blade. And so, I got everything from, a lot of hunchback comments, a lot of dysphoria, there was definitely bullying that happened. A lot of people kind of giving you the look like, oh, what's going on? What's wrong with you type of a feel. Definitely had a lot of that.
Okay, and I have, maybe this is an unusual question, but this started when you were about 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
So you were living a normal life up until junior high, I guess, up until middle school. And I'm sure you had a group of friends that you were already close with by that time. Did you feel like a lot of your friendships or relationships with these people changed once your body started to change?
I love that question, Jen, because I actually didn't have many friends up until that point because I had grown up with childhood abuse within my home. And so I was a very distant child. didn't really want to share my feelings, didn't want to tell anybody what was going on, kind of hid behind, blankets, I guess you could say, because I didn't want people to see what was really going on. And so because of that, I didn't build a lot of connections and friendships. So when I got into middle school, I was already kind of in that space of feeling isolated and distant, which I did in large parts also to myself as a self-protection mechanism.
Yes.
And so going through that experience just kind of almost ingrained it even deeper for me. Like, I've got to hide, because I would then, with the brace, wear these big baggy shirts. I didn't want people to run into me, because then you could hear the clank of the brace.
Yeah.
And so I'd sit in the very back, never in the front. I'd never raised my hand, never engaged, anything like that, because I was just so ashamed and so afraid that people would be able to see not only the physical parts of me, but also the emotional trauma that was going on behind the scenes in multiple layers too. So.
Wow. So you already were making yourself invisible, and then you adopted another layer of invisibility on top of invisibility. And I'm not ready to talk about your book yet, but I'm putting a connection together, because your book is about a woman whose daughters go missing and they're pronounced dead, but the mother is convinced that they're still alive and starts seeing them. And now I'm just even more intrigued. I've been wanting to read your book prior to this conversation, but now I'm even more intrigued to find out what made those daughters go invisible, and if it was a physical thing, or if it was a supernatural or psychological element. So I find that so fascinating. So now I want to talk a little bit about the surgery and the recovery. So you said that you were a victim of childhood abuse. Did the abuse intensify when you became diagnosed with this problem? And things were taken out on you, and then because you needed so much help and so much care through the surgery, and you were helpless in that situation. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. What did you do? What tools did you develop as a young person in order to help yourself heal, both emotionally and physically, and also find a way to protect yourself when you were physically helpless?
Oh, you just got me right there, because it
I'm
definitely.
sorry, is this too much?
Thank you for validating, Jen. I think I love that just having these conversations, if it's so wonderful that we can understand one another, and I felt so validated just with what you said right there. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I wrote, journals were my safe haven. They were a place where I could put everything on the paper that I was feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, and it was safe and it was okay to use my voice. It was okay to say what I didn't like, what wasn't working, what was hurtful or painful, in spaces where I felt I could not reach and use my voice in other areas, even though I wanted to. And so that really helped to get me through multiple layers of validating myself. As I would write things down on paper, I also found myself, even as a young kid, saying, okay, I'm not crazy. Okay, it's okay to feel like this. Yes, that did happen. And that was really needed because of my situation, within my home, but also the physical disabilities and feelings that I was having. To continue to validate myself on paper was just that next step to help me get through the next day of okay, that did happen. What are we going to do now? And just take those steps one step at a time and go on to the next day was what it usually looked like.
Wow. I can't even, I don't even know what to say, how to respond. I'm so sorry that you had to live through that trauma, both the physical illness and the abuse at home. No child should ever have to live through that. You know, and actually now it also makes sense why you started your inner enlightenment company and that program. Can we transition to talking about that a little bit now? Because you know, children who had childhood illnesses or who were victims of abuse were robbed of their childhood in so many ways. And you developed a company called Inner Enlightenment, where you teach creativity through play and through connecting with the inner child and nurturing the inner child. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this company came about, a little bit about your methods, and a little bit more about what you do when you teach creativity.
Okay. Inner Enlightenment is very much built in helping to support teens, kids, and adults that have any form of anxiety, PTSD, panic attacks, depression. And it's a space where they can come and be able to have a voice in whatever form feels playful, safe, and wondrous to them. So that can be music, that can be art of any form, that could be writing, painting, building, whatever that looks like. It is just holding a safe space for them to know that they are held within just feeling what they're feeling within any given moment. I started that from my own experience of realizing, even as when I went into adulthood and I started having a family of my own, realizing I still had a lot of unhealed PTSD and triggers that were not being taken a look at. And because of that, I would end up reacting and behaving in certain ways that would affect everyone else around me. And I didn't realize that that was happening for a really long time. And when I started noticing within my own relationships really started to fail, and I would blame everyone else, but really it was a big part of me and the different pressures that I put on myself, the pieces of me that were still really hurting that I had put away in the closet for so long, were still asking for me to pay attention to them. As we still have the inner child within us all the time, no matter how old we are, there's still that piece of like, please listen to me, please see me, I want to play, I want to create. And that's when, as adults, we get these excited feelings when we pass like a pet store, or we pass, you know, a paint shop, and we're like, oh, I really want to go in and I want to pet a dog, or I would really like to take an art class. Those are pieces of our inner child that's coming out, that's like, please listen to me. I'm ready for fun. I'm ready for play. I really just want to do something that's creative where you can support and see me. And so as I started teaching myself how to do that over the years, I noticed a shift within myself, that I began starting to love who Lauri was. I began to be able to have a voice, like not just on paper, but really start telling people, this is what happened. Can I talk to you about something? Can I share my truth? It just expanded so many other areas in my life, but it had to start with first creating a safe space of allowing myself to just put what I'm feeling on paper in some form in art. And then it just moved from there. And so that's what Inner Enlightenment is all about, is helping people, kids, teens that feel like they're alone, that they don't have a voice, that they don't have someone there to listen, that they don't have value or worth, that they can start learning how to show up for themselves in a loving, fun, playful environment to help them learn how to step into learning to love themselves, having their voice, being able to communicate with other people. But it's first got to start within themselves.
Yes, I love this. And I love how you talk about putting something on paper, whether it's painting, art, writing, even music, because we write music. Because our feelings disappear into the ether, you know, and a lot of times our feelings don't feel real, our pain, because, you know, if we have a cut, if we have a broken arm, if we have some sort of physical pain, we can pinpoint it and we can process it in a logical way. Whereas our feelings are so, first of all, intense, but second of all, they're so hard to share with other people. It's so hard to share our pain, our fear, our trauma. You know, for some reason, joy just spills out of us. It's hard when we are super happy. It's really hard to contain joy. Joy just overflows like a waterfall. But in terms of any negative feelings, negative emotions, they want to stay buried. And there is something very healing, just like when you were a child and your safe space was your writing, and you couldn't have a voice, you couldn't speak up for yourself, you couldn't tell people what was happening to you, but you could put pen to paper. And as soon as you wrote those things down, they became real, and your feelings became real, and your feelings became validated. And I think it's extraordinary that you are helping other people, whether they're children, youth, adolescents, adults. Everybody needs tools to help process trauma and pain and fear. And of course, find a therapist, find a doctor, find somebody else to see. If you've gone through something, anybody who's watching, please find a certified professional. But in tandem with that, because they're only skilled in certain areas, they can help heal you in certain ways. And I'm sure you talked to people before you started using this creativity in order to heal yourself. But it's a different part of the brain. It's a different part of our psyche and our emotion when we use creativity. I just wanted to, you know, qualify that if somebody's dealing with a major trauma, major depression, anxiety, please definitely seek professional help. But there are other tools you can do in addition to that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes with children or with youth, they don't have agency to seek out a professional, but looking into some of your courses is something that they can do for themselves online.
Mm-hmm. I love that, Jen, because I've been seeing a therapist, and it has been really healing for me to be able to still do my work individually. So I'll go to a therapist, talk with my therapist. She has given me some really great pointers. Last year, there were multiple things I did not want to see, which is going to happen in therapy, but I needed to see. And what happens is then when you start seeing that, it's like this open door where then you can take what you just learned in therapy or what you learned from going to a specific certified doctor and apply it down on the paper and evaluate and process that even more within yourself, which is something you can also do for yourself. So absolutely, there's multiple points. I would not be here, honestly, without multiple doctors and therapists, and also me showing up for myself. So there are definitely two parts
exactly
that have been needed in my journey. So absolutely.
A lot of times you're going to need to use 3 or 4 or 5 different methods in order to heal you in a complete way as a complete person, because we are so multifaceted and the brain has so many different compartments going on at one time. This inner enlightenment course sounds amazing. Do you do workshops? Do you work one-on-one with people? Are there online resources?
Yeah, so right now I'm doing creativity sessions that are one-on-one, and we'll also do online group sessions here shortly. In the future, there will be, there will be retreats
Mhm.
that we will do. But right now it's all online based at the
Well,
moment.
with COVID, that's
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
The rules are changing so rapidly, it's kind of hard to plan anything right now.
Mhm.
Well, I'm so inspired by you, Lauri. This is just amazing. And the fact that you have the courage to talk about your trauma and talk about your past is huge. And this brings me to your amazing debut novel. I know you've been writing for quite a while and you've written articles and short stories. You've been part of collections, but this is your debut novel. And I would love for you to tell us where the idea came from, how it was inspired, and your journey of publishing. So tell us about Little Owl.
All right. Little Owl is a multiple POV psychological thriller. The main character is Adeline Rushner, and she is an unstable mother who is trying to build safety and consistency within her home. That's something that's really important to her. But she is finding a struggle on knowing how to do that because she's going through her own PTSD and anxiety through childhood trauma. So she wants so much to be this piece of a mom to her family, to her little girls, but she doesn't know how to be that. And when her daughters go missing, she ends up being faced with two choices: to accept that they're gone or accept that they can't be gone and there's still more that she needs to figure out. And she decides that she cannot accept that her whole world has been taken from her. And because of that, then she starts becoming her own investigator and looking into the question of what happened to my daughters, which takes her down this journey of asking what happened in my childhood and why am I feeling this trauma and what's going on within me. And it's a self-discovery journey where she starts to begin to find out what lies she's told herself, what lies the ones around her that she loves has told her, and the lies that she told herself she needed to be that she never had to be at the beginning. So it's very woven, kind of what we talked about. There's a lot of me that is definitely placed within this character of finding out who she is through trying to find what happened to her daughters.
Wow, heavy, but it sounds fascinating because there is a little bit of a supernatural element to it. So what inspired you to write in this genre? Because you could have written a memoir, you could have written, you know, so many different types of genres. It didn't have to be a psychological thriller. So I'm just wondering, like, what inspired you to go down that route? Are those the type of books that you're attracted to? Is that what you love to read? Yeah.
I love, ever since I was little, like I grew up with Nancy Drew. I love mystery and I like psychological thrillers a lot. And the reason why I do is because they explore why people are the way that they are. And I remember as a little girl, growing up in the home that I did, wondering, seeing so many different pieces of my parents, but also not understanding who I'm seeing anymore. And so there was always that question of what's going on with them, what's wrong, and asking myself, well, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? What am I doing all right? And so that began the investigator journey, I think, for me at a very young age, of trying to understand people, but also trying to understand myself and how that interweaves with each other as well. So that psychological thrillers are very much based in that. A lot of it is what's going on in your mind and what is the causation behind what's going on in your mind and how are you reacting to what you think is your reality versus what your reality really is, and kind of finding that medium. So yeah, I love psychological thrillers to understand the depth of people and why people show up and do the things that they do. But it's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, it definitely is fascinating. Okay, so you've been writing for a long time. You've been writing since you were a child. What prompted you at this stage of your life to say, okay, I'm going to write my own novel? Did the story just kind of, did you wake up and the story hit you one day, or was it, oh, I've been writing for so long, it's time I write that book that I've been planning forever?
I was not planning to write this novel, Jen. Like, it was a moment where I had two little girls at this time. I had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I had massive postpartum depression, which also was really stirring into my PTSD as well. And so I was feeling very heightened emotions during that time. And it was literally me just getting in the shower. And for whatever reason, I thought, well, I can't leave my girls because something bad's going to happen to them. And that felt very real to me. So when I got in the shower and I couldn't hear them like talking at all, that's kind of when my panic arose. I went out, checked on them. They were completely fine. But the feelings that I felt were so raw and so real. And I didn't feel comfortable at that point reaching out to someone and saying, something is like really stirring in there. I'm really freaking out right now. And so I went and I placed it all on paper. And what happened when I wrote out everything that I was feeling, 2 weeks later, it was the question of, well, what would I have done if something happened to them? But it was more of like a mysterious feel, like the mood had lightened a little bit. And it was like, let's go on an adventure, but also explore, what would you have done if your girls went missing? And that's when little Al just kind of little by little, a little Al, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It just started piecing together where I began seeing the setting and the characters, and this main character, Adeline, is still a very big part of me, but she kind of organically became her own person through the process as well. Where it needed to be written in that moment. And there was a lot for me to explore. This book took me 11 years, but I say that I was on the journey to help Adeline, but really Adeline was on the journey to help me, because it was a self-discovery journey for me as well, of just really figuring out these pieces within me that needed support and guidance and assistance. And this book creatively helped a lot of that.
Well, yeah. And, now people talk a lot more about postpartum than they did 10, 20 years ago and beyond, but it's not, when you think about it logically, the fact that you're a new mother with two small children at home, a 2-month-old, a 2-year-old, a 6-month-old, your body has been on a roller coaster ride of hormones, pregnancy, giving birth, hormones, pregnancy, giving birth. That is a lot for one little person to go through, and it's amazing that once again, you put pen to paper in order to heal yourself, in order to explore what you were going through, in order to have that confidant again. And I can totally relate to the character starting off as you and starting off rooted in emotions that you were trying to process, and then evolving into her own character, and then the story evolving beyond the world that you live in into creating a new world. Because my writing usually stems from my emotions, and it's funny, I talk about how I write my emotions through metaphor, and that becomes my stories or my film work or my poetry, whatever it is. And you have a wild imagination. I have a wild imagination. So people start assuming things about me, that I am that character, or that I lived through certain experiences that I write about. And it's like, no, that's a metaphor for this. This is a metaphor for that. And yeah, and I feel so in kin to you, because I do the same thing with my writing. It's always stems from some sort of emotion, regardless on what side of the pendulum it's on.
I love how you brought joy, Jen, too, because there's a lot of moments where I sit in a space where I'm with my kids and I hear like their laughter, or I'm like sitting at the table and everyone's together. And it's just that moment, like it's always those moments of just, this is so beautiful. And I just want to soak in like the feeling and the emotion within this space. There's a lot of that placed in Little Owl, of those moments of just complete joy, but then the moments of complete horror and discomfort, because life is like that. There's all these pieces of beautiful moments, but also these really hard moments, and it ebbs and flows, for all of us, as that's what life is just this beautiful blend of a symphony of all the emotions.
Yes, all the feels, all the colors, all the textures.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been such a treat chatting with you. I'm so excited that you took the time to talk to me today. I know you're very busy with your book coming out. So please tell us, where can we find you? Where can we find the book? Where can we work with you for inner enlightenment creativity coaching? Let us know everything. And of course, we'll have the links below so everyone can find them easily.
Thank you, Jen. I have so loved chatting with you today. It's been so fun.
Yes.
You can find Little Owl on Amazon. Also, you can find me anywhere on social media under Lauri Schoenfeld. So laurischoenfeld.com, that's where everything will be placed for the courses, book, classes, any updates and news within writing. And then also on Facebook and Instagram, it's under Lauri Schoenfeld as well. Those two are usually where I'm at the most. So.
Okay, well, that makes it easy. It's the same across the board. It's all uniform. Fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you again so much for chatting with me today and sharing so much of yourself. You really are an inspiration. And I want to thank all of you out there in the interweb for tuning in. Please check out Lauri, check out her incredible book, and don't forget to try something you never thought that you would do. Let us know what it is in the comments and where it leads you. And if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. Have a beautiful day.